Perkins Engine Company Limited is primarily a diesel engine manufacturer for several markets, including agriculture, construction, material handling, power generation, and industrial. It was established in Peterborough, England in 1932 and has been a subsidiary of Caterpillar since 1998. Over the years, Perkins has expanded its engine catalogue, producing thousands of different engine specifications, including diesel and petrol engine for automotives. Hello everybody, and you're very welcome back to the channel. So a little bit of a different video this week. Obviously, as you can see, I have very little audio. We had some technical difficulties during the week with our camera setup and that. So this video is going to be primarily audio based, with a few pictures thrown in, not as many as usual, but however, the information and the material is going to be just as good as ever. To everybody that tuned into our video last week, thank you very much. We got a lot of views, a lot of comments, and a lot of new subscribers. So yeah, please keep them coming. We always love to hear from everybody. If you'd like to support the channel, please keep subscribing, please keep liking, please keep commenting. And if you could, another way to support the channel, if you'd like, you can actually super like the channel. You can super like each video. It'll give you an option when you click the super like button. It will give you an option to leave a small donation if you like. So any money gained from any of our videos, goes straight back into producing more videos and more content. And any help is very much appreciated. So yeah, we're going to move on with the Perkins Engine Company. We're going to look a little bit down through the history, and then we're going to talk about the man himself, or the men that were behind it. And I have a couple of questions that I'd like to pose during this, that during my research I just couldn't 100% find the answers to. So there might be some people out there who were involved with the Perkins engines, or some of the design or engineers even, who might be able to fill me in a little bit on it. So I'll have a couple of questions coming up down the line. So to start off with, looking at the history. So F. Perkins Limited was established on the 7th of June 1932, and it was founded by Frank Perkins and Charles Wallace Chapman. Now, Charles Wallace Chapman was an engineer, and the first question I have is, was he related in any way to Colin Chapman, the very famous motor racing engineer from Formula One days? So was Charles Chapman and Colin Chapman, were they related? I couldn't find any information to say that they were, although they did live, they were from similar eras. They could have been brothers. They were from similar eras and similar time. So were they related in any way? So yeah, Charles Wallace Chapman. So on Queen Street in Peterborough, to design and manufacture high-speed diesel engines. Chapman was the design engineer, the technical director, and the company secretary, and had 10% shareholding in the company. He continued working at F. Perkins Limited for more than a decade before rejoining the Royal Navy Reserve, though remaining a consultant to the company. Frank Perkins obtained further initial support from directors Alan J. M. Richardson and George Dodd Perks. Before Chapman and Perkins, the diesel engine was considered heavy and slow revving workhorse, lacking performance. Chapman's concept was the high-speed diesel, an engine that could challenge petrol-driven ones as the primary motor power. The company's first high-speed diesel engine was Perkins' four-cylinder named the Vixen, which made its debut in 1932. In October 1935, Perkins became the first company to hold 6 world diesel speed records for a variety of distances. This was set at Brooklands racetrack in Surrey. Sales were strong, and by the time of World War II, the company made 2 series of engines, that was the P4 and the P6. Soon after the war, the company went public and established a number of licensees for local manufacturing and sale. So looking at the Massey Ferguson era, so then F. Perkins Limited was purchased by its largest customer, Massey Ferguson, in 1959, with Perkins keeping its separate identity and branding. In 1990, Massey Ferguson took over Dorman Diesels of Stafford, merging it with Perkins to form Perkins Engines Stafford Limited. In 1984, Perkins acquired Rolls-Royce Diesels of Shrewsbury, continuing to supply British Rail with engines for its diesel multiple units until the site closed in 2002. In 1986, Perkins acquired L. Gardner and Sons to complement their line of lighter diesel engines. Gardner exited the truck engine market immediately, although production for the bus, coach, and marine markets continued under the Gardner brand. In 1994, the whole of Perkins was sold by Lucas Verity, who immediately closed down the Gardner brand and sold off Barton Hall Motor Works in Pagecroft, Eccleston in Manchester. Development continued and Perkins updated its engines to meet stricter emissions rules while developing new engine series for power generation and forklift trucks. Manufacturers such as Dodge, Ford, Grospel, and Rankle used Perkins engines in their diesel-driven products for more than 2 decades. Other manufacturers include Gema, Aros, Brinda, Rutina, and they all used Perkins impellers for harvesters at length. Looking at Argentina, so Pertrac was founded in 1961 as a licensee of Perkins engines in England and was dedicated to the manufacture of Perkins engines for pickup trucks and tractors. The most productive period for the company was in the 1970s when they produced almost 200,000 engines. In 2010, the last engine was made in Cordoba when the license was dropped. Throughout this period of almost 40 years, more than 500,000 engines were produced. The factory continues to make engines parts for other makes such as Fiat and Scania. Into the Caterpillar years then, so from the early 1970s onwards, Perkins was a major supplier to Caterpillar, who was a major customer for Perkins Diesel's smaller and mid-sized engines. Caterpillar was a major producer of large diesel engines for stationary and mobile applications. In 1998, Caterpillar bought Perkins from Lucas Verity for $1.325 billion, creating what they claimed was the world's largest diesel engine manufacturer. Perkins now had manufacturing facilities in the United Kingdom, the United States, Brazil, China, India, and a joint venture with the ISM Group in Japan. On the 1st of June 2018, Steve Ferguson became president of Perkins Engines, replacing Yamin Yunosi after having worked as the general manager of Caterpillar's advanced component manufacturing department and overseeing operations at 15 global facilities. Ferguson is a vice president of Caterpillar. So the second question I pose is, was Steve Ferguson in any way related to Harry Ferguson? I don't think so, but I'm just throwing the question out there. So looking at some discontinued products, so various Perkins engines have been made for industrial, agricultural, construction and material handling, marine and power generation markets, and Perkins gas-based engines, so natural gas, landfill gas, digester gas, biogas, and mine gas are used for continuous power generation. Perkins 4.99 1.6 litre 99 cubic inch and the P4C engine 192 cubic inch producing 45 or 60 horsepower were popular in Europe and Israel for taxis and commercially driven cars during the 1950s and early 1960s. Many cars, including American imports, were retrofitted with these engines for taxi use, with kits made from Hunter of Belgium. Perkins engines were also used as standard factory equipment in Jeeps and Dodge trucks in the United States in the 1960s. They also continued to be popular in European trucks from their original customer, Comer, and other companies. The Perkins 6354 medium diesel engine was designed to be compact enough to replace petrol or gas V8 engines in trucks. Despite its inline 6-cylinder design, producing 112 horsepower in the early years, later rising to 120 horsepower, it had a small jack shaft driven off the timing gears for the auxiliary drive with the oil pump driven by a quill shaft, so it could run auxiliary equipment at engine speed with simple couplings. Until the 2010s, Perkins manufactured engines for JCB, but since then, JCB manufactures their own engines. Perkins engines today, of course, are used in tractors, generators, industrial equipment, forklift trucks, combine harvesters, cranes, boats, you name it, you will find, if it's in off-highway, off-road loose, you will find it, Perkins engine. Their biggest customer is their parent company, Caterpillar, particularly for excavators and diesel generators. Perkins Marine also produces small engines for marine propulsion. So we'll take a look at Frank Perkins himself. So Frank Perkins, the man whose name is found today on some of the finest diesel engines all over the world, was born in Peterborough, UK on the February 26, 1889, the son and grandson of agricultural engineers. Francis Arthur Perkins, better known as Frank, went to rugby school but left with health problems after 1 year for Gresham School in Norfolk. Frank's grandfather had developed the family business, Barford and Perkins, in the 1890s from an existing firm of agricultural engineers and iron founders, and his father later became joint manager. So, a farmer, not an engineer. So, with a third-class degree in engineering from Cambridge, Frank did not join the family business immediately, but started farming in Herefordshire. He left the farm in 1914 and volunteered for the army, serving through the First World War in Palestine and Europe with the Royal Engineers. He was demobilised in 1918 with the rank of Major. He returned to agriculture, taking a 400-acre farm in Herefordshire with his wife Gwyneth, whom he had married in 1915. After a few years, he moved back to Peterborough with Gwyneth and their young family and began learning the engineering business at his father's firm, which had become part of the Agricultural and General Engineers Group, so that would be the AGE. He was personally responsible for developing dairy and sterilising machinery. By 1929, he was works director at another company, another sister company of AGE, Aveling and Porter at Rochester in Kent, where he met Charles Chapman, the man with whom he would start his own company. At that time, diesel engines were popular for agricultural machinery, but considered too big and heavy and slow-running for road vehicles. In 1932, Frank and Charles Chapman agreed that a smaller engine could fit into private cars, vans and light trucks and would have an enormous expanding market. In June 1932, their new company, F. Perkins Limited, moved into offices at Queen Street in Peterborough. Frank began to handle dealings with potential customers and signed an agreement for Perkins engines to be used in the Comer van. Humbert, the manufacturing company responsible for the Comer, became the company's first OEM, so that's the original equipment manufacturer. Perkins and Chapman led the company through several financial crises during the early years, but by 1939, the company was in a position to take a significant role in the country's war effort, producing a total of 1,485 engines during 1941. Chapman left in 1942, but Perkins continued as chairman and managing director through the war and post-war years. By 1951, he was able to announce that the company was the biggest producer of world diesel engines in the 50 to 70 horsepower range. Frank's role in the wider engineering industry was recognised with his appointment first as vice president and then president of the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. By now, he was one of the most influential businessmen in the country, running one of the key companies in the crucial engineering sector. However, in 1959, with the takeover of Perkins by the international giant Massey Ferguson, he announced his decision to retire from active management, continuing his association with the company as chairman of the board of directors. After 37 years, it was the end of an era. Outside the company, Frank had maintained his interest in agriculture throughout his life, running a small arable farm near Peterborough. He was also very active in charity work, particularly with the Peterborough Council of Boys Clubs. He was made an honorary freeman of the city in 1962. He also served as High Sheriff of Cambridgeshire and Huntingdonshire. From 1959 to the end of his life, Frank developed his interest in shooting, fishing and sailing. He had 3 daughters and a son with his first wife Gwyneth. After her death in 1961, he married his second wife, Maud Dixon, a widow. He died on the 1st of October 1967. So we'll just take a quick look at probably the most famous engine of all, the famous 6354. So if the P6 was the diesel engine that gained the early reputation for Perkins, then the 6354 provided the foundation for worldwide growth throughout the 60s and the 70s. Adoption for use in every market sector, the 6354 was designed in the late 1950s and soon became a mainstay of Perkins productions from 1961 until the 1990s. Designed in Peterborough, UK, the concept offered the idea of a compact 120 horsepower unit where an auxiliary drive was taken from a small jackshaft driven at engine speed from the timing gears. This allowed the use of a new DPA fuel pump mounted vertically and driven through a worm wheel and pinion, with the lubrication oil pump driven coaxially by a quill shaft below the worm wheel. The extension of the jack shaft then allowed auxiliaries such as compressors, vacuum pumps, hydraulic pumps to be driven at engine speed, mounted off the cylinder block, and driven through a simple, flexible coupling. Another significant change from the previous six-cylinder engine was the introduction of direct fuel injection. This used a toroidal chamber in the piston crown rather than the aeroflow chamber in the cylinder head. This resulted in more power from the same swept volume while improving fuel economy. With accurately cast inlet ports in the head and the new CAV pump and injectors, new standards of smoke emissions were also achieved. The 654 was designed in the late 1950s and soon became the mainstay of Perkins productions up until the 1990s. Production started in 1960 with the engine being a hit for most applications, to result in new versions of power trucks, tractors, industrial and marine equipment. The rating for vehicles soon increased to 120 horsepower, whilst turbocharged versions called the T6 354 were developed quickly for Massey Ferguson tractors, marine and industrial applications. The marine market proved especially attractive, with inclined versions of the engine being produced to fit below cockpits. Ratings from 150 horsepower for general use were available, but much more for offshore powerboat racing, where Perkins established an enviable position in the late 1960s. During this period, many changes were made to the engine to improve its durability, including revisions to the cylinder head gasket, valve train and piston assembly. Further changes, which include modifications to the coolant system, signalled the DOT series of engines. Changes of bore size were also introduced to meet Massey Ferguson's requirements for engine power matched to the machine or tractor. Successive introductions to suit various market needs were the 63541, 63542, the 63772, 63721, the 6306, the T63543. In the late 1970s, a major redesign of the engine block and head, which changed to other components, resulted in the introduction of the 63544 and the T63544, which eventually replaced all other versions. The changes included machined inlet ports and the elimination of tappet side cover plates, bringing the appearance of an engine more in line with the 4236 family. Production of the 63544 was not restricted to Peterborough, as license agreements were signed around the world during the 60s and 70s. Production of the engine began in Mexico, Argentina, Turkey, Peru, South America, Brazil, and the United States. The 6354 became an engine locally available to customers across the world, using some parts supplied as kits from Peterborough. New engine applications were appearing all the time, as the engine adoption of the new design and the readily availability of many conversion parts made the 654 family the product of choice for customers both large and small. By the mid-1980s, the 6354 was taken over by the new 1000 series engine. This was designed around the same basic 1 litre per cylinder, but the radical changes to achieve tighter emission standards and meet demand for metrication were the needs for a more sophisticated market. In 1996, the last 6354 engine came off the assembly line. More than 1 million engines were produced in Peterborough, plus significant volumes around the world. Many of these are still in use today, proving the ability of this multi-purpose engine to give reliable, economical service wherever power is needed. And we do, of course, on this channel see a lot of machines with the 6354 engine. And of course, anyone that is familiar with the famous Massey Ferguson 1200 has seen plenty of them as well. A tractor that obviously has become very famous over the last couple of months with different guys across the internet and across YouTube, of course. So yeah, that's it. That's where I'm going to leave it today. That's just a quick introduction to the Perkins family, the Perkins history, and Frank Perkins himself. So if anybody does know about the relationship between Charles and Colin Chapman, if indeed there was one, or any other questions that I have posed, please drop us a shout into the comments. Yeah, so that's it. I will have another Perkins video down the line, a little bit down, a couple of weeks down the line. Just looking at a few more of the different engines, be more of a regular video, looking at the different designs and different applications and machinery that these engines can be found in. So that's it for this week. Hope everybody stays warm and dry. It's been a terrible week for weather. So yeah, everyone take care, stay safe, and I'll chat to everybody next week. Thanks.